Okay, so we were playing with Python. So let's look and see what we have set up. I'm going to go ahead and start my database server. So database server started. We created 4 functions on Friday. And they're for procedural logic SQL. So we'll try to see if we can get into playing with those today. Visual Studio Code. We installed it on Friday. We created a new file called chapter16.py, saved it as a Python script. And if you launch your Visual Studio Code and open that file, it's probably auto-opened for you. You should see Python 3.94 at the bottom left. Does everybody see that? And we've opened up Windows PowerShell.
I do not see that on my DB Forge.
It's Visual Studio Code, not DB Forge.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, let's see it.
And to review, we added the Python into our path statement. We also installed and told it to add another path for some debugging stuff. So the path was File Explorer, the properties of this PC, which is just system properties. And this is something anybody in coding or, well, IT, you need to know. I've seen coders not know about the environment path, and I'm not real sure. I guess they were new coders or they weren't very major coders, because path is extremely important to make computers work. So advanced system settings, we went in, we checked out environment paths. So whether you're in Mac OS X, Linux, or Windows machines, they all have a path statement on where to gather information. So the path, when we installed Python, it automatically put the Python location. We had PowerShell tell us that it auto-installed the debugging script, pylint and stuff into roaming Python 39 scripts. So we had to manually put that in there, but it told us in yellow inside of Visual Studio Code that says, hey, Horning, you should probably fix your path statement. All we had to do is copy this top one up here that was preloaded, paste it, and change local and programs to the word roaming and get that fixed. There's a global path statement for everybody in the system. And one thing I don't see, it probably would load, but I don't see the Visual Studio Code bin and stuff. I don't see the path for Python in there. So it makes me wonder. We told it to install for everybody. It probably put it in the registry to make a symbolic link to programs in Python for anybody that logged into the system. If you have problems though, and you have more than one coder on the system, and they log in and their Python path isn't working correctly, you may have to edit the system variable down here and go ahead and new and browse and actually find where Python's installed. Uh-oh. Am I blind? Maybe it didn't install globally. It doesn't look like it did. I thought I put the checkbox to install it globally. May have missed that. May have missed a check. Installed it globally on my laptop, but apparently it's not. Apparently it only installed into the apps folder, app data folder for the local user. Yeah, it's not there. Okay, I installed a little bit odd. But that's fine. We'll maybe the only class that has it installed. It might even be better if we have another class, they'd have to go through an install and set up into their profile. But path is very important. So you can just type Python at the command prompt and it run instead of having to go C:\program files /Python /Python 3.9 /bin python.exe space, and then whatever you want to execute. That's a lot of typing to get in. Plus the program files have a space in it, so you have to surround it in quotation marks. So it can be kind of complicated there. Your path statement too, anything with spaces, you'd have to put surrounded in quotation marks for it to work. There's a couple of ways to connect to a SQL database. One of the main ways, which we're not going to use, but they do have a feature of that, is using the ODBC connector. Let's go ahead and search the Windows for ODBC 64. Yep, so I have an ODBC 64. And this system is for Microsoft to connect into different databases. I would have to Google for Python or Postgres ODBC driver. And they've got a download site here where you can go to and you can download the ODBC driver for Python. We're not going to use ODBC on this one, but this is a troubleshooting that I've had to install. We had an issue with a door lock system with the dorms here on campus. And we moved the application, but the ODBC driver to connect to the database wasn't installed. But I knew that this existed, and a lot of applications coded use this interface here to link the application with the database. And I was able to find the driver for the database that was using, install it, and type in all the code for the login. And then the application was able to connect and work. So none of these really have a configure on them. if you install a driver, there would be a link here, or I could add once I install the Postgres, and it would give a listing of Postgres SQL versions that I could pick on and add it in. And then it would ask me for the host name, username, the port number, and the password, and the database name to make a connection. So almost exactly like what is asked right here. It basically gives you the same type of dialog box with an ODBC connection. So it keeps it saved onto that computer. So when you're running the application doesn't have to constantly have username, password. It just connects the ODBC connector and makes that connection in. You can make it to where you have to log in though, but I just wanted to show you that's one option. You may not have ever opened this tool before on a Windows machine, or even knew it existed. Even all the way back to Windows 3.1 and stuff. It's just the software interface that allows procedural logic language to be transmitted from an application layer to the database layer. So it's the middleman who passes off communication. So that's one method. The modules that use the ODBC driver for Python that I was looking at were actually a 7-day trial and would have to purchase. So I found another driver that is free. And I did that by Python connect to Postgres SQL. Found this tutorial that gave a module that you can install into Python called the PSYCOPG. So that's a module that somebody has written. It's kind of like the ODBC driver, but they include everything all in one. So we can include in our code the ODBC connections and stuff with it without having to install an ODBC driver. So the instructions pretty simple. It's Python install program, I think is what pip is. I might have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure Python install program. So we're going to pip install PSYCOPG2. So from Visual Studio Code, should have a terminal window that would allow you to go ahead and run the pip install. And if all of our pass statements are done correctly, you should get these output as I got on my screen here. It's PIP. They also give other options. If you downloaded the source package, you could build it and compile it. Sometimes downloading and compiling software on your computer makes it a little bit more efficient because it can read your CPU. That's here. Hello? Yes. I'm going to resume recording here. So with that installed into the system, what we can do next is go ahead and make a connection into our Python database. So we installed something that doesn't come with the base features of Python, and we have to import that into Python. Lots of coding languages will even require you to import things like input, output modules and different stuff like C. You almost have to import anything even before you can print something to the screen. Python's got several things already imported for you, like printing to the screen and stuff is a feature. But connecting to a database is not something that just automatically comes with Python. And we, of course, seen we had to install this separately. Other people have other tools that you can install besides this one. So for our script, we've got to import the package that we're coding with. Okay, so once that is in there, we could put comments in. So that imports the extra package for connecting to Postgres databases. Installed with pip install psy cop g2. That might be something that you wanted to put in there as a comment to actually show what you had to type in to install the package to make it work. Hey, that's not part of Python. And if you're taking this home, wanting to play with it at a later time, a year from now, and something, it might be something for you to have that comment in. It's always good to comment up your coding language. Before we can interact with a database, we have to make a connection to it. And again, this is a scripting language, not a full coding language. It's a really powerful scripting language, probably better, more powerful than PowerShell. Is definitely more powerful than PowerShell, but one of the things we can do, we can create variables without having to declare exactly what the variable is. So I'm going to make a connection, and I'm just going to abbreviate it, CONN. I could use anything there. I could use Steve equals, but connection makes sense because I'm making a connection. So I'm going to store a connection, the connection properties to the database. The PSY copy to has a function called connect. So I'm going to type the name of the module. I'm going to put a period. It's kind of like some stuff you played with PowerShell for those that run through that. And I'm going to type in We have connect, date. There's several things that we can pull from there. Timestamps. But what we're going to do, we're going to connect to the database. So connect. And inside of parentheses, we're going to make the connection. So as I type it, it can connect supposedly to a DS name. That would supposedly be with the ODBC connection. I tried this over the weekend, but wasn't able to get it to work properly. So what I did, I looked down here and looked, we could also connect with the set of parameters. And the set of parameters where you can put DB name or database, several different ways you could put this in. So a list of things we can use: DB name, database, user, password, or host. So keyword arguments, what it's talking about. The DB name, I think, comes up here with the DSN connection, and database is used for when you have to use host down here. Let's first connect to the host. And inside of double quotes, localhost. Could be a remote host, and your database doesn't have to be running on your main machine. So you could use an IP address in here. You could use a fully qualified domain name in here, or just a local host, 127.0.0.1. The next thing that's a part of the connection string, what database do we want to connect to? I want to connect to the Chinook database, since that is where we have our functions that we created. It is case sensitive. Chinook has capital C. We also add in the user. Anybody remember what the user is? Postgres is the user. And we did not have a password. Probably not a good thing, but we didn't have a password for our database, so we don't have to put the password in. Let's go ahead and do a Control F5. And see if we get any type of errors. You said you got an error? What's the error say? Okay, so you've got a warning down here at the bottom about Python path. Let's go ahead and go to your file explorer and go to your environment variable properties. and go and hit edit there on the top one. That looks correct. Interesting. Let me pause the recording here, see if we can. So I've already got the same warning. Let's go ahead and delete this script file. I'm going to take control, Bethany, and yep. So the roaming one, we had to right click or open up File Explorer. If you didn't get the error, you're good. Looks like 3 people didn't get the error. So I'm not sure what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that. I'm going to browse. Maybe just, is it just Wade and Bethany? Looks like, okay. So I'm going to open up this PC. I'm going to open up C drive. I'm going to open up users. I'm going to find your username. And I'm going to type in \app data. Well, that didn't quite. Why is y'all's hiding? What's going on? Why did it duplicate? That's weird.
On the top one says scripts, the second one.
Okay, yeah, so that one, okay, delete that one, hit okay. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to File Explorer, go to View, and click Hidden Items. And I'm gonna have to do more than that, I think. No, app data is visible. Roaming, Python 39 scripts. There's my scripts. That looks exactly like what we had before.
Copy and paste that.
Yeah, I'm going to copy and paste it in. Oh, where'd it go? No, I can't see it anymore. There it went.
Oh, still got the same.
Okay, once that's pasted in, you'll have to exit. You have to save. And you'll have to exit. And then you'll have to relaunch Visual Studio Code.
Specifically, the open watch.json.
Okay, I think I clicked it. Where did it go? You want a lint. You have an update to install. So let me install that. Is it still? Okay, so I'm going to go to Python. So what did y'all do to y'all's Python that was different? And your environment is set. That's supposed to be an image, not a bigger test. Nope. It's running now. A lot of things. Okay, so click down there in the bottom left where it says Python, and then go ahead and click the Python up there at the top. Now click back on your file and do a Control F5 and see, does that work? So yeah, now I've already done that on yours, Bethany. So that's, I was going to start one by one and what I thought that I did to make it work. Somehow that didn't register that path. So I was recording. So yeah, when that come up, we just had to re-click the Python at the bottom and re-click that, hey, that's the actual interpreter to use. I don't know. That was weird. So okay, now everybody's caught up, right? Now you can do Control F5 just to see that it works. And I think James, yours is working, right? Control F5, yeah, this is working.
Yeah, it's working.
You have CON and minus, you need CON and equals. You got an error on yours.
I got an error.
Yeah, it says connections not defined because you're trying to subtract instead of put an equal mark up there.
Oh, okay. Which one? Because it's hard to see. I can't see my stuff.
Right after connection.
Okay.
Okay, so we all did a connection. Now, what comes next is chapter 16 talks about cursors. And I briefly talked about a cursor on Friday. So again, what is a cursor? Basically, it's a cursor is as I'm clicked into a row. The cursor is the row that you're on. It's where your cursor's at. So with your coding languages and stuff, like I said, normally they're not going to see everything. They can't see all the rows at once. Just like in PowerShell and stuff, we could read stuff into an array, but we couldn't really do anything with that array, which is a spreadsheet like this. We had to go through a for each loop and do them one at a time. So a cursor is pretty much what that is. It allows you to pull one row at a time. So we're going to create a cursor that will read a query from a database, and it'll form a cursor to where, whereas we're investigating, it'll do one row of information at a time. So that's what cursor is. It's just going down, fetching the next row, do something, fetch the next row, do something, fetch the next row, do something. As I was saying, cursors in SQL code, I even say in the book, cursors don't really make a whole lot of sense coding them inside of the SQL language itself. Writing cursors in the application language makes more sense because that's where they are used. I'm going to comment this out right here, put a connection. So stores the login for the database. just to make sure it's going to work, before we take a break, I'm going to make a cursor. I'm just going to abbreviate it UR for cursor. It's going to equal so I have a connection right here.
Yeah.
That's storing my connection string. So I want to connect. And from my connection, I'm going to put a period. From my connection, I want to open a cursor. So cursor is the function. It's going to use the connection information, the localhost, Chinook, and Postgres user to open a cursor. And then that's going to be stored into CUR. One more debug, I'm going to do a Control F5, and this here should make sure that connection's opened, because this here opens a session with the base. And opens a cursor. So Control F5, I don't have any errors appearing. At this point, I'm probably pretty sure that my connection information is typed in and the database is up and running. I made a connection to it. I'm going to test it out real quick. If I close the database down, will it error out? I don't have my command prompt back, so I've got an error. So I got a lot of stuff on my screen because it can't make the connection. Could not connect to server. Connection refused because it's offline at 127.0.0.1. That's the local host, 7.0.0.1. So if you run yours and you didn't get an error, then that means your connection information is correct and you've connected successfully from an application coding language or scripting language into your database. Some of this here. So we have some functions. One of the functions that we did, AMI4, took in two different parameters or arguments into it that allowed us to search for a song name and an composer or artist. Let's go look at that. Let me go look at that code. So it's allowing us to view the composer and the artist. So it looks like we did a perfect and Billy Corgan for a search. Okay, so we've opened up a cursor. Now recording again. Yes, okay. Couldn't remember if I started or not. So the cursor opened. Now we can execute a function or procedure. So with my cursor, I'm going to take the cursor and I'm going to call a procedure. So call proc, call PROC. So I just keep on combining aspects of stuff together. It's a little bit interesting. So the procedure, I'm going to get the procedure name, which is AMI4. That's the one that we created. Put a comma. And I'm going to use hard brackets to pass arguments into that procedure name that we created. So instead of having to write SQL code to select whatever column names from whatever tables and joining tables together and all of that stuff, we created this function that does that and accepts a couple of arguments. So I'm calling that, and I'm going to pass in, we know that perfect and Billy Corgan works. So perfect, comma, and this out of quotes. Billy Corgan. So I'm adding a comment there that runs the functions that we built into the Chinook database, passes two values into that function. Okay, everybody got that in?
Yeah.
Control F5. No more errors, or no errors, hopefully. So still don't have anything to the screen, but James said something.
Yeah, is it a mid that you type in between the single
AMI4.
quotation? AMI for okay.
Yep. Okay, next we're going to create a variable to store a row of information in. So we have a cursor, and the cursor needs to, it's fetched, or it's basically, it's got an open connection with the database, and it's got the search, and it's possibly at this point in time, maybe even have millions of rows or whatever, and we don't want to pass that all into the Python at one time. So that's opened up on the server side. And we want to do like maybe DB song search. So database song search, I'm just making up a variable here, equals the cursor fetch one. Fetch, boo-boo, fetch. Remember that on TV? So what this does, it fetches one row from the cursor that we opened up and from our search parameters that we added in. Of course, our search only has one row, but for now, that's we fetch that row into this variable. So fetches one row, first row from variable. I said if somehow that come up to be 1 million rows, it would just fetch the first row from the database. Now let's print it to the screen. With the print command. You done any Python?
Yeah. Been doing code down.
Cool. So going to print it, and we're going to type in db song search. And just to be nice, I'm going to go ahead and close the cursor since I'm done with it. So that's a really, really simple Python script. If you have a query that you're running, a function that you're running that returns multiple rows, we could put this into a loop, kind of like a for each row thing, and print stuff out to the screen. Let's go ahead and do a Control F5. And if you remember, when we coded AMI4, we coded it to where that it's only passing one single value out of it. It's not passing any type of row headers. We're not seeing the unit price. All we're seeing is a decimal value of 99 cents.
Never mind. Here it is. Can I do F5 again?
Yes.
There we go. I put BD instead of DB.
So I'm looking, looks like everybody's got it pretty good. Cool. You can change this up. Let's search for another song. I think it's 99 cents too, but let's check out for AC DC. And let's see. Go Down, I think, is a song from AC/DC. Run it. So it runs too. Okay, neat. So that's Python. Opening up a cursor. Let's look, see what else. Where's DB Studio Forge? So what else have we done? So we have an AMI2. An AMI2 here, what execute that. We can search for a particular artist and it will dump out to the screen all of the albums and songs that that artist produces. So if we want to play with that, this is getting so let's do a new file. And let's save the file. There's a Python file, of course. Chapter 16 underscore AMI2 is what I'm going to name it. And for Python, for learning stuff, it's always best to just type. So we need to import the module again. PSY CO PG2. We need to make a connection to the database. Connection equals the PSY copy or COPG2 dot connect. And we're passing into this one the host equals localhost database equals Nook and user is equal to Postgres. So just like we did before. We're going to make a cursor equal to connection dot cursor. I'll just jump back and look at my old code. Yep. Actually, not cursor.
Wanted to fetch all, how do you do that? So just fetch one.
So. Let me do some quick Googling here. Uh-oh, I didn't resume recording. Well, there's the final code on what we did on the part that I didn't record. We switched over to a while loop. Okay, that's the end for today. We'll make it interactive on Wednesday.